Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today we're going to give some love to the rhythm section. We got the great Nashville drummer, Pete Abbott. A couple of quick thank yous. This guy was such a difficult guest. I had to go back to people he went to college with. This guy's in demand. I want to thank our mutual friend and amazing guitar player, Jim Oblon, and also our good friends, John and Shelly DeFaria. So thanks, guys, for hooking us up. Pete, originally from LA, now living in Nashville. He's an in-demand session drummer and a guy. He's been mentioned with high admiration by at least a dozen guests that I've had here on the show. So I'm really happy to finally connect with him. He's also a super cool guy. He's played with artists like Randy Brecker, Bette Midler, Paquito D'Rivera, The Average White Band, Tom Jones, Rebekka Bakken or Bacon. How do you pronounce that?
It's Bakken.
Rebekka Bakken, who's a very successful Norwegian singer artist. Bob Babbitt, of course, great bass player. David Hungate, Reggie Young. I had Reggie on the show here, man. What a lovely guy. I was very lucky to talk with him before he passed. Scott Kempner from the Del Lords, Ashley Monroe, and Pete actually toured with her for 5 years. And I think, would you make 2 or 3 records with her?
I didn't make any records with her.
I thought you made records with her.
No.
Shemekia Copeland.
Shemekia
Copeland.
I've done 2 records with her. We're going to do another one in the fall.
Another super talented artist.
Yeah, she's great.
And he also routinely plays with some amazing players in Nashville, including Jim Oblon and Victor Krauss. Both of those guys were on here a while back. Kenny Vaughn, former guest. Dave Rowe, one of the funniest human beings I had the pleasure of talking with. Great keyboardist Charles Treadway and Pat Bergeson, phenomenal guitar player, man. So
yes,
he's a man. Pete,
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great to see you, man. Thank you for having me on. I was not expecting it, since I think I can play 2 notes on a guitar, but whatever I can contribute.
Well, like 20% of my guests are not guitar players, so it's all good, man.
Yeah.
All right. You're born in LA, but you graduated high school in Denver. When did you guys move over there?
We moved from LA to Denver when I was about 6 years old. I've got a younger brother who is a wickedly good guitar player. And
really?
Yeah. And Mike, unfortunately, he was born with asthma. And that's back in the days of some hardcore pollution and poor air quality out in LA. So
yeah,
my dad, he's an aeronautical engineer, and he worked for General Dynamics out on the West Coast. And then when it was necessary for us to move, he ended up getting a job with what is now Lockheed Martin Marietta.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I don't know that it was too tough of a move to make. I think, having your kids be that age, not infants, it's not too bad. And
yeah,
my mom's very task oriented, so they made it work, and then the upbringing was pretty much in Denver.
Cool. Did your brother, was that better for his asthma, living in Denver?
It was. In fact, it was odd when we ended up going to the University of Miami. If I remember correctly, I mean, that's a drastically different air quality and environment just because of the humidity and the heat. But I think he did pretty well in Miami.
Oh, did he? My brother had asthma, my younger brother. We're the same age, so I wouldn't doubt our brothers are pretty close in age. And the worst thing I remember is he used to have to take this medicine, yellow medicine called Tedrol. I don't know if your brother ever had to take that, and it was just horrific. It was like it was like the solution was worse than the problem. So,
of course, there are the inhalers, and all I remember is we had cupboards full of medication. Mike had it really bad when he was younger, and it slowly, as you get older, it gets better to a certain degree. And of course, it depends on how well you take care of yourself.
Yeah,
but I think the worst medication for him to be on when he would struggle with something, they'd put him on prednisone.
Oh yeah.
And really high dosages of it. And I've taken it a little bit, very small, and it made me want to jump out of my skin. So I can't imagine what it was like for him.
Like a Z-Pack or something?
Yeah, it's like a Z-Pack, no pun intended, like a Z-Pack on steroids, right?
Dude, let me tell you, I had to be on that, and I'm watching a movie with my wife one day, and it wasn't even a sad movie. And she turns around and I'm bawling. She goes, what's the matter? I said, I don't know. I cried. I said, I'm not taking that medicine anymore. I think it's that.
It's the medicine. It's the medicine.
It wasn't even like, like a sad part or like, it was, I was like, no, I was clueless. And she goes, it was a medicine. I said, I think so. I'm done.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. We will start this interview. I promise.
Oh, no, that's good.
Okay. So you guys moved to Denver, which is probably really a beautiful place to grow up anyway. Like,
it was fantastic.
Topography wise and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We, my parents were great. My dad, he'd take us up skiing, and we had some family friends that I think their daughters ended up being pretty close to Olympic caliber skiers.
Wow.
They were really good. So there was the winter activities in the mountains, and then when we got old enough that we could drive up there were several days of skipping school and going skiing instead of doing what we were supposed to do. But
right on.
It was a really good environment to grow up. And back then, there was the El Chapultepec, a really famous jazz place that people going through town, we could see them down there. They didn't give us a hard time about being underaged and going in there, and some good places to hear music, and a pretty strong just musical presence in Denver.
You ever see Tommy Bolin?
I never did.
Yeah, I think he was from the Denver area.
Okay.
Yeah. So you started playing piano at age 6. So that must have been shortly before after you moved, and drums at 10. You say your dad was an engineer. I know your mom, you said, sang in church. Was there more music than that, or?
Yeah, Mom was she was a piano major in college. So she had a lot of piano under her belt, and it's a typical scenario of, mom starts the kids on piano, and then the relationship becomes a little bit difficult.
Right.
And so she had a friend that was also a piano teacher, took Mike and I to her, and then I don't know however many, 4 or 5 years later, we started on our respective instruments. But I am completely convinced that it's the best way to go, for somebody that is let's just say, of the percussion ilk.
Yeah. Because
you start to recognize, harmonies that you like, tonal centers. If you study and learn how to play the simpler classical pieces on piano, you start to understand form and how important it is, from the beginning of a song, for the song to have a somewhat of a logical arc to it. And I'm happy that I started on piano and then went to drums.
I've heard that from many people most dual, people who start on one instrument are really happy for that when they got, whether it's guitar to drums or drums to guitar, or like in your case, piano to drums. I hear that often.
Yeah.
You then went to University of Miami, which is a great music program. You graduated from their excellent studio music and jazz program in '87. And then you headed straight up to New York. And I thought that was a really ballsy move to do that. And I was curious what prompted that, and how did you go about looking for work once you got up there?
Yeah, well, basically I didn't know any better, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's like, that's a ballsy move. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the guys that I'd played with, Miami's program is fantastic. And, there was a lot of, I never really spent a ton of time working with Randy Brecker. Randy, he came down and we played a concert, the be all end all band. Once you got into that band, then Whit Seidner, who ran the jazz program, he had all the connections to the New York guys. So it was Paquito and Bobby Mincer, Randy Brecker. I never got to meet Michael Brecker, unfortunately, but Randy was one of the coolest human beings, along with Mincer. And they would come down and play maybe 1, 2, 3 nights at what's the place on Sunrise Boulevard, Musicians Exchange.
Yeah, that's gone now, I think.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I used to live in Fort Lauderdale. I used to live in Plantation, and that's what you're talking about on Sunrise. Yeah.
Yeah.
I lived there 17, 18 years ago. Musicians Exchange. Yeah, that's right. That's a good memory. Shit, I don't think I would have remembered that.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time there. And, Randy would call Whit up and say, hey, we're not going to bring a drummer and a bass player.
Oh.
And there was one time he did bring a bass player, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He was great. It was after Randy was married to Ileana Elias. And they had done this record, and it was all the guys. Gottlieb played on some of it. Weckel was on some of it. And so it was really fun to get called to play that gig, get a copy of the record, try to play it at least somewhere close to what is being played on the record, because those guys had way more experience than I did. But,
sure.
What a great learning experience. And both Randy and Ileana, I mean, they had to have heard the difference, because I was quite young back then, but they were really supportive people. They were all for it. And we probably played a total of 4 or 5 nights at the Musicians Exchange with them. And one of the trips they brought Barry Finnerty.
That's very cool.
And he was off the charts, man. It was like, he'd keep going and going and going with his solos, and you start to realize, all right, and I've got to do something to support this guy while he's soloing. And it was a great learning experience. And then I spent 2 years working with, do you remember Randy Bergeson?
No, sorry.
Great guitar player from Lauderdale. And we played every Tuesday night at the Musicians Exchange. And Randy, after that, he had a deal with Zebra Records, which was their jazz offshoot of MCA.
Okay.
And put out a couple of records, and he was really close to Jocko. And so he knew all the guys, and his records were full of, he had a local rhythm section that he recorded with down in Fort Lauderdale, but then he'd go up to New York and he'd use, Gad and Anthony Jackson, or Gad Marcus Miller, or, just a multitude of people. So it was kind of the same situation. It's like, okay, here's the record. Now let's go play this stuff live.
So you had to cover Gad's lines.
Yeah. Or Tom Breckline. Breckline played on a couple of things, and, you can't have a better experience than that without meeting this person. And that's pre-social media. That's what pisses me off about social media. I didn't want to know anything about them personally. It's their playing set enough. So it inspires you to recognize where your weaknesses are and where you need to get better. And so the Musicians Exchange became a little bit of a home away from home every Tuesday night. And you didn't know who was going to show up, or, what, if Jocko walked in a couple of times, and he'd play and blow up an amplifier. And he actually played one night. He asked Randy, he said it was the anniversary of Marvin Gaye's death.
Okay.
And he said, I'd really like to play an homage to Marvin. And he got up and played piano for an hour and a half. And somebody somewhere has a cassette of that.
Piano.
He played piano. Yeah. He's a really good piano player.
Did you ever get to play with him as part of the bass, and when he was playing bass and you held down the
I did, when he would come and sit in. I never did technically a gig with Jocko.
Right.
It was, he and Randy knew each other really, really well. And if he sat in, that's when I got to play with him. And every now and then we'd do a weather report song, or we'd play The Chicken, or, one of his, infamous pieces. But yeah, it was a great community. So the school tied to that whole South Florida. And once I started investigating it a little bit further, I realized just what a thriving musical community it was. Duffy Jackson was down there at that time. And there isn't anybody that swings harder than Duffy did,
Yeah, that used to be a good community down. And I say used to, it's not that it's bad now, but it's, like everything else, it's just shrunk a lot.
Right.
So, okay, what got in your head? You said, I'm going to New York.
Guys that were a little bit older than I was, that had already moved to New York. And one of them called me up and said his roommate had gotten a road gig, and he said, if you want to come up here, there's a room waiting for you. And I just went, all right. And so it was just fly by the seat of my pants.
Your parents were cool with that?
They were great. They've always been extremely supportive. They've never given me well, you might want to think twice about this, or you sure you want to live in you know how people that have not been to New York, their interpretation of New York City is, man, this is a really dangerous place. I don't want my kid roaming around the streets in New York.
Yeah, they think you're living in a hotel in Chelsea, like paying a night rate or something like that.
But I definitely had something in the back of my mind that we didn't grow up with a ton of money, but we grew up comfortable.
Sure.
And my dad worked really hard, and we didn't have to struggle. We always knew we had food, and we had what we needed. We had it about as good as anybody does. And, sure. But there was something in me that I knew about all these musicians that had struggled. And I thought, well, maybe that's part of how I'm going to get better. And it was, you go up and you're lucky to make $50-$100 a month, and you have a little bit of savings, you eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Right.
And slowly you start to kind of sift through and make a little bit of a name for yourself so that you can get at least one gig that will offer you some sort of steady income.
Sure. What was that gig for you?
The first gig was a Russian party band.
Wow. Isn't that wild? You're not getting that in Nashville.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I subbed for this guy, and we could go. There were nights where I walked out, it was all tip based, and a couple nights where I walked out making over $2,000, and then nights where I'd play a 5-hour almost continuous gig and walk away with $175.
Wow. But it sounds like it's almost like being a realtor. You got to show one guy or one person, 40 houses, and it's a lower price house. And then somebody calls you to sell their $1.5 million property, and boom, it's done in 3 days.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. And then there was a band, an R&B band. A friend of mine was playing in, and the drummer in that band do you remember a guy by the name of Steve Hawley? He played with Paul McCartney and Wings.
Sorry, man. Great
drummer. And he ended up going back out on the road, so his spot opened up, and I went and auditioned, and if I remember correctly, I think that's how I ended up in that band.
What was the name of that band?
Diane, the leader of the band, her name was Diane Scanlon.
Okay.
And we'd played down at a club every Wednesday night, and great band, really good 3-piece horn section, and good. We'd do anything from Etta James to Etta James, Michael Jackson, Robbie Robertson. I mean, she pretty much covered.
That's a wide
eclectic.
Berth.
Yeah.
Where was your gig? Where's your?
The name of the club was, it was right down in the Fashion District of New York. So 8th Avenue between 25th and 26th.
Okay.
I will not remember the name of it.
Yeah, dude, that you remember the location is pretty impressive. To be honest with you, I'm like, I'm sold. You passed.
And there were a lot of people that came in, and that was a good. It was a good place to meet other musicians that would come through. Diane had been there for a lot of years, and the rest of the guys in the band were older than I was, and it seemed like for some reason pretty much every experience I had, I was always the younger guy in the band.
Isn't that great? Have you? And
it
then
is.
Like when you get older, it's like you're never. Like I always used to be the young guy wherever, and now I'm like never. Like you're my age. I'm so happy because most people are on the show younger than me, and I'm like, God, I'd like to get someone older for it. I'm getting older, so it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so and you were living in the city or out in Brooklyn?
I lived in Astoria, Queens for the first couple of years. So just
real 1 or 2 train stops into the city.
And in the R, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I did have a car. I had this blue van, 3-speed blue van with no air conditioning.
Perfect. Musicians,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. And then from there, I moved down into, let's see, I lived in the East Village on 2nd Avenue between 5th and 6th.
Dude, that's a great area.
Oh, it was that was a blast. That was my last 6 years in New York.
That's great.
Yeah,
What a
it
cool-
was a good place to live.
Did you know John McCurry by any chance?
No.
Guitar player. He lives down there. Interesting. Okay, so you got things going up in New York, and you started playing sessions at that point.
I did a little bit, you know, far from the guy that comes to town. There are too many good musicians in New York, and you know, got to do a little bit of session work. There was a guy that I played in his band. His wife was the Phil Ramone's production coordinator.
Okay.
And yeah, and through her and through meeting Phil, I got to work with Phil, I don't know, maybe 8-10 times. And there was the obvious hierarchy of, you know, there was Gadd and there was Chris Parker and Pelton was in there. And every now and then it would work out. And, you know, more than anything, it was fun to work and hang out with Phil and hear the stories out of his mouth, right, instead of out of a secondary, from a secondary source, and learned a lot from him, because he's an old school producer. He will not say anything to anybody until it's absolutely necessary. And you know, the first session I did with him, I kept looking into the control room and I thought, why is he not saying anything? I mean, how is this working? How has he become this great producer? And it's so hands off. And a little bell went off and went, well, of course, think about all the rhythm sections that he's hired. You really wouldn't have to tell those guys much, you know. Second song in, he said, hey, and he referenced a record that Gadd had played on. And he said, do you remember the bridge of that song, what Gadd did? And unfortunately, at that point, we didn't have cell phones, so I couldn't put YouTube on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he kind of sang it to me, and I went, oh yeah, I think I remember, and figured it out in 1 or 2 takes. And then I went, all right, now I get it. He and the engineer were just in the control room and they were laughing and telling jokes, and he'd hit the talkback button once in a blue moon and just go, I'm not getting this in this section of the song. And the musicians would change accordingly. And that was it. You were done. So
he talked when he needed to talk, and that was it.
Yeah. And the cool thing about Phil is of course, you know, you can imagine if you're working with, let's say it's Gadd, Willie, and Don Grolnick, or a rhythm section of that caliber, the chances of needing to say much to those guys is probably slim to none. But
sure.
Yeah, it was nice that it wasn't the worst thing in the world for me. Is if I go into a studio here in Nashville and somebody, whether it's the artist or the producer, they start jumping the gun and they say, on this song, I want you to play this, this, and this. And I've never heard the song. So right. It's information that just goes in one ear and out the other ear, because there's no relevance to it.
Yeah. Your frame of reference is zero.
Absolutely zero. And so, you know, to get the opportunity and just Phil's ears were so huge, you know, you just got the impression that, okay, maybe it's not that big of a record. Maybe it's a demo session. And he doesn't care about it the same way that he would about a Paul Simon record or a Billy Joel record. And, you know, no, I was absolutely wrong in assuming that. It was just, he just let his ears soak up what was going on. And then if he wasn't getting something, he'd say something, and then he shut up again.
That's cool.
Had great jokes, had great stories, of course, from all of his years, but yeah, a lot of fun.
In 93, you auditioned for and were made a full band member of the Average White Band. And then you spent the next 5 years touring the world with them. How did that all come about? That's a pretty major thing.
Yeah, it was interesting. The guy that was doing the gig, the Average White Band, they reformed in around 1987, 88. And they did put a record out that unfortunately it was programmed drums, which the Average White Band and programmed drums, I mean, all those great records that they made, whether it was Robbie McIntosh or Ferroni playing drums, I mean, the rhythm section playing was just stellar.
So it was the whole thing was groove based.
Yeah. So the drummer that was playing in AWB when they reformed the band, really good drummer. I think he just wasn't necessarily the right guy for the gig.
Sure. That's
my take on it. And, but he was also working with Jose Feliciano. So this guy called me up and said,
wait a minute, but you worked with Jose also.
I did. Well, I was subbing for Tiger, the other drummer that was doing the AWB gig. And Tiger had called me up and Jose was going to do this big Southeast Asian tour that was like a month and a half long. And he called me up and he said, can you cover this? Because I've got a conflict with this AWB tour. And it's like, yeah, great. Paid good money. And Jose's band was a pretty small band. Bass, if I remember right, bass, drums, keys, and Jose.
How was that gig? If you don't
Jose?
mind, yeah, he was.
It was great. He was one of the funniest human beings I've ever met. And I didn't spend a ton of time working with him. I think I did a total of maybe 5 shows.
Yeah.
You know, a couple that were up in Connecticut. So it's a little bit hazy in terms of, all I remember is when I played with him, it's like anybody, you know, you hear somebody sing that has a very distinguishable voice and distinguishable style. And you start playing and you're just thinking, this is great. Because it's the real thing. This is that you start to really hear why this person has been as successful as they have been. And so anyway, I was set to go on this tour with Jose, and Tiger calls me up and he says, change of plans. And he had just gotten let go by the Average White Band. And I hope I'm remembering my events correctly, but I think he called me up and he said, well, they've kind of changed the direction that they're going to go and they're going to have auditions. So I'm going to need to take the Jose gig back, but I'll give your name to Alan Gorey if you want to audition for the Average White Band. I said, yes, I'd love to, please. And so Alan called the next day and said, you know, it's not a cattle call. They had, I don't know, 20, 30 guys show up. And I went down to this rehearsal studio and I mean, there were guys in there that, you know, Richie Morales was there, guys that I knew of from records that they'd played on. And my natural instinct is this guy has more experience, so they're going to choose him. But I'll go ahead and I'll play a couple of songs and it'll be fun to meet the guys. And we got along so well from the beginning. And I would say half of the reason why I got the gig is because our personalities really fit well together.
Wow.
I liked him. I mean, our family has pretty heavy Scottish background.
That's like Bob Seger only hires people from the Midwest or Michigan, even like, yeah. But there's a vibe.
There is. And when I got in the room, they said, what do you want to play? And I don't know, maybe we played Cut the Cake, Person to Person. And I think I wanted to play If I Ever Lose This Heaven, which is a song that I've always loved. And
Cut the Cake is from a drumming standpoint, it's a lot going on.
It is. It's you know, it's interesting to listen to how Ferroni played the track, because the little gold nuggets that he puts in there, the turnarounds and what makes it funky, those are things that I hawked a lot. And I knew him. And I think what they were looking for is a guy that really understood. They wanted a band member. They did not want a side guy that they were going to pay separately from the rest of the band. Which is
very unusual. When I read that in your bio, that you were a band member. That doesn't happen often. I mean, it was right place, right time, and I'm happy that it happened for you. But what was there? Why did they want to do that? I mean, I'm glad, obviously, for you, but you don't hear that.
Well, I think they wanted to do it because that's what they'd always been. They'd always been a band. You know,
Okay.
they never had when the unfortunate event of Robbie dying, which was, if I remember the timeline correctly, that's right before Pick Up the Pieces, or right at the time when Pieces became a huge hit. I mean, it was a #1 hit.
Yeah, it was on constant rotation,
and it's still being used in movies. And
yeah,
you know, it's pretty amazing how long the legs are that song has. And but they, you know, those guys built that band from the ground up. So in its original state, they were all Scottish. And then when Robbie passed, they used a couple of other drummers, but both Robbie and Steve Ferrone had played with one of the artists that they had sort of a mutual relationship, and they tossed the gig back and forth, was Brian Auger's gig.
Right. Okay.
And they kind of had, the way I understand it, of course I don't know the whole history, but they eventually got a hold of Ferrone, and as soon as he sat down and played, Alan said it was like they were back home again.
Okay. So
that's what led to, what was that, maybe 1975 to 82, when the band first broke up.
Okay.
And they're family oriented guys, you know. Alan and Ani are they're the only two remaining original guys in the band. And I think that was their makeup. They wanted somebody that was a comrade.
Yeah.
And that's what we became. You know, it was the best road experience for me because I wasn't a side guy. And Alan's a straight up business guy. He handles all the band's business, and everything was, we were 5 pieces when we did the studio record. You know, he's a really smart guy, wickedly smart guy. And he had everything figured out in terms of publishing, writing credits, all the things that you have to do. But he was very upfront. There was never one instance where I ever wondered if I was not getting paid, let's say if I was getting paid less or not the accurate amount, according to me being, you know, the 5th or 6th guy in the band.
That's great.
Very honest individual. Yeah. And
what good experience for you. You're 30 years old, you're in New York City, and now you're a band member of a very well-known band.
And I was single. That was even better. We had an absolute ball. It was, you know, a couple of years ago in 2019, Alan called up, and the drummer that's been doing the gig, Rocky Bryant, fantastic drummer from New York. I think he's done the gig for 14, 15 years. And he got offered the Tina Turner Broadway musical. And because of his life situation with his kids and some of those types of things, he needed a guy to back him up on the gigs that he couldn't do.
Sure.
And so I started working with them again. I think I did, I don't know, 15, 16 gigs the end of 2019 before we got shut down. And then we're looking at some more in the fall.
Oh, that's in the fall now in 2020. That's great, man.
Yeah.
How come you left, or if you're comfortable?
Sure. I'll tell you. I started having really weird problems with my ears and my hearing. And after going to several audiologists, I went to one in Scotland when we were on the road, and he said, I think what you have is it's called labyrinthitis. And it's a micro inner ear disturbance. It can be caused by stress, lifestyle. I mean, you know, Ani, bless his heart, he's a great rhythm guitar player, but his sound was a little bit more on the bright side.
And so you think that stimulated that?
I think it's a combination, but it was weird. I started, I didn't feel well. I mean, I would suffer from having these spells. If there was a low enough frequency that got hit, I'd end up with a little bit of vertigo.
Oh, that's awful, man.
It's horrible. I mean, to sit at
Yeah.
a set of drums and while your head is kind of turning upside down, all you can do is hold on for dear life. And
Yeah,
and
it's really rough, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I love the band. I don't think I saw my way through it. The only way I saw it, I'd met this woman in Norway, and I knew that, or at least I thought that I wanted to be married.
I thought, you know what? When I read your bio, I said, this guy was in Norway. I said, there's got to be a woman in this story, man. That's a big ass move.
There
Okay.
was a very attractive woman in this story, but and we got along. But culturally, we come from such different places that it kind of ran out of gas, so to speak. And we didn't have any kids together, so it was easy to dissolve the marriage. But being able to, hindsight's always dangerous, but to go back and look at it and look at what I had with the band, I can now see that, well, I made my decision, and there was I benefited a lot from it in terms of the other experiences that I've had. And luckily I've been able to go back and play with them.
Yeah.
And, but if I could have figured out another way to do it, it would have led to me probably settling into a city earlier here in the United States and being able to build up at least a good enough reputation that my life would have become set in a good way instead of moving around so much.
Yeah, man, but you can't do that to yourself. You just like,
No.
I mean, I look, we've all done stuff that we're like, fuck, why did I do that? But, I always try to rationalize it and say, well, you know what? Maybe I saved my life by doing that. Maybe I would have been on a plane flight. Maybe I would have gotten hit by a car. I mean,
Right.
If I'm healthy and happy now, I try, that's what I always try to come back to, because like there's so many second guessing you could do.
Yeah.
Especially coming out of this pandemic where it sucks. And especially for you guys in music, it really sucked, so it's very desirous to say, well, if I would have done that,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the thing that I realized after the fact is I didn't quite understand just how good of a friendship I had developed with all those guys. And it's always different with, let's say you got 4 other guys in the band. You're not going to have the same friendship with each one of those individuals, but
of course.
Alan and Ani are Scottish. And I'm not saying this works this way all the time, but, having Scottish blood, I love that culture.
Right.
And I love the people. Some of the most fun that I've ever had is being over in Scotland with those guys.
Right.
And it's the dialect is fascinating to me. The people that I met over there.
The dialect is crazy, man. It's really hard to understand some of that stuff, man. And I get accents real easy, but that I struggle with sometimes.
It can be, you go up north and you start, it's like any country, as soon as you get out of the heavier populated areas where you get this sort of travel back and forth in a good brunt of the population,
right,
in these remote areas where these people only use their individual dialects, it's like, oh my God, what's this person saying? Are they trying to get me to eat haggis, or are they trying to get me to go round up sheep, or what? And
even the writing, in Wales and Scotland, there, some of the when you see the stuff in print, it's totally opposite to anything like 3 W's in a row or something like that. Like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, we had a tour manager. He's done really well for himself. His name is Wooly, Wullie, Wooly Roach, and he and his wife live
name.
up in. They live up in the not too far from. What's the big airport up in Washington, D.C.? Dulles.
Dulles, yeah.
But I think technically they're in Virginia. And some of the coolest people that I've ever met. And Wooly grew up in the roughest neighborhood in Glasgow, just outside of the airport.
That means he's a badass, because that's a rough area there, from what I understand.
I wouldn't mess with this guy if my life depended upon it, you know, and luckily he's in my camp, so I don't have to worry about that. But he took me into this neighborhood one day, and, you know, there's all these apartments and they're boarded up, and he said, hey, let's go into this pub that I used to hang out in when I was 14, 15, and 16 years old. And we walk in, and first three people sitting at the bar, he knew them.
It's crazy, man.
It's
a sad testament to people that's how people are, man. They sit on the bar stool or their apartment terrace or their stoop, and that's it. They're there for life, man.
Yeah. But you could, you know, from being in the pub with him and seeing people engage with him, they obviously loved him. Yeah. And I think he was probably, maybe, if I remember right, I think Wooly had a brother, and the older people would kind of look after them, make sure that they were okay. And you did not mess with Wooly, but he's one of the biggest hearted individuals that I've ever met. And it was great having him as a tour manager. It was like, man, I've got nothing to worry about. You know, you'd be up in Liverpool or Manchester, one of these places, and we'd be out at night, and people like to drink, and they get a little bit off their rockers. And I just kept looking over and go, oh, we're fine. Wooly's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a great tour manager.
Your problem with your ears, did that resolve, or is that something you've got to live with and you just learned how to?
It resolved.
Oh, it did. Wow. Yep. Are you lucky, man? That's fantastic. Did you see that movie, The Sound of Metal? What is it called? I think about the drummer who loses his hearing.
Oh, I've heard about it, but I have not seen it.
The acting in there is phenomenal, because you really see, like, you know, what can be worse for a musician than losing your hearing, right? And his ability to convey the emotional pain associated with that was great. I have to say, the beginning, it's a little slow. You just got to hang in there, and then it's great. Yeah, it'd be well worth it.
I'll watch it.
Yeah, it was really good. But I'm glad you got that resolved. Holy crap.
Yeah, I was lucky, you know, and the advice that I got from one doctor and the rest audiologists was just, you got to take a break, set it down, live a little bit different lifestyle. And, you know, the road, I mean, we had, that gig is a really good gig. So if we were traveling, the food that we had available to us was really good. We didn't have to go out and eat fast food.
Great.
We had people that wanted to kind of wine and dine us because of the history of the band, and they genuinely liked, they loved the original members of the band and had a ton of respect for them. So I know, I can tell you this for a fact: you get out, you get in those environments, and it's so much fun. You have a tendency to drink more than you normally drink.
Of course, it's absolutely.
And I mean, I'd come back off the road and I'd go to the gym every day, and it's like, no, I'm going to lay off for now. But the labyrinthitis went away.
It's great.
I still struggle with tinnitus, but most people, or tinnitus, however you want to pronounce it. But that's something that all musicians, metal workers, anybody that works in a loud environment, they're going to suffer the ill effects of that. But it's not anything that, it's not a worry, and it's not a distraction.
And I had Al Di Meola on here. He has suffered with that for so long. Yeah. He can't sleep without proper, prescription meds.
Man, I saw a clip. I was in the old YouTube wormhole the other night, and this old video of him, and that was, I don't remember the name of the record. They were playing one of those songs. It was just like ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
And watching him play, never met him. I don't really know much about Al except for his work with Return to Forever and the obvious things. But there were a couple of records that I really enjoyed listening to. And it's amazing. You can hear a song or a guitar solo or anything that's sitting in your memory banks, and all of a sudden you're sitting in the apartment on 2nd Avenue in New York, with your friends around going, hey man, you got to check this out.
Yeah. Music's, it's a great thing about it. Yeah. It's very, It's very nostalgia driven inside your memory bank.
Yeah, that and old girlfriend's perfume smell.
Okay, so after Average White Band, you moved to Norway. You worked there as a session drummer. Got married, split up. What did you take away from that experience?
Well,
that was a long time you were there.
Yeah, I was there for 9 years, and the first 2.5 years, I stopped playing. I did not touch a drum, pick up a pair of drumsticks. And when I moved over there, I went to a company in New York that they would rent cargo containers. So I figured out how much stuff I had, which included a couple of drum kits, and had my stuff sent over there, by boat. So it took 6 weeks for it to get there.
Wow.
And I just put it in storage, and I got a job working as a bartender, which has led to managing 2 restaurants, which I will never do again in my life. But at that point, I needed to work. I needed to make the adjustment to live in their world.
What was like the biggest culture shocks things that you had to deal with?
It's really smaller. I lived in a town that was pretty close to the Norwegian and Swedish border. The town was maybe 47,000 people. And so I somewhat stuck out like a sore thumb, because people recognize when there is somebody that they're not used to seeing.
Right.
And that was good in one way and bad in another way. But it's the longer that I lived in Norway, the more it's a beautiful place. The people are really nice, but it's a little too small, a little bit too homogenous for my taste, and close to my family, and wanted to be back here. So, but I did, it was great. I learned the language. I was there during 9/11. And
wow.
Got to see all of that from overseas. And
you speak Norwegian now?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
If you wanted to have a conversation about law or medicine, no,
maybe not so much.
No, I don't have the vocabulary for that. But
totally get it.
Yeah, going over and having a conversation with somebody, that's not difficult. And it took a while to get to that point. But the reason why you learn the language is I was paranoid. People were saying things behind my back, and I was like, no, I want to understand what they're saying, so that it's weird to have that barrier. People say something to a group of people and they laugh, and if they're looking your direction, you're scratching your head going, well, was that about me, or was that about something else? So there's only one way to put that one to bed. So I learned the language, and slowly started. People, of course, knew the Average White Band, and through other people, I started getting little bits and pieces of work teaching. And then my friend Leif Johansson, who I went to school with, he had a studio in Oslo.
So wait a minute, this is a guy you went to U of M with, who happened to be Norwegian.
He's half Norwegian, half American. And when I moved over there, you'll get a kick out of this one. I called up directory services on the telephone, and in English, because I didn't speak Norwegian yet. And I said, well, you're going to laugh when I ask you this question, but do you have a number for Leif Johansson in Oslo?
You have 300.
I think it was about that. And
like John Smith.
Exactly. Or Peter Peterson in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I just told her, I said, give me the first, 3 numbers or 4 numbers, and I'll call you back if that's not it. And the first or second number, it was his.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah, it's weird the way the universe works.
Yeah. Was he? And so he must have been like, Pete? Like, that had to be wild.
Yeah, he makes a joke out of it. He said, yeah, Pete called me up and said, is this Leif? He goes, yeah. Leif Johansson? Yeah. Do you play bass? Yeah. Did you go to the university? I kept going through every little detail to make sure it was him. I go, hey, life, it's Pete.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah. But, slowly he and I started working together, and I started to get my shit together again, started practicing, was going through a divorce. And then,
oh my God, that's got to be horrible going through divorce in another country.
It wasn't fun, but it was, the writing was on the wall. So luckily the aspect of the divorce, or any divorce where you're trying to figure out, hey, are we doing the right thing, or, are we jumping the gun? Do I still love this person? Do I still want to be in that went away pretty quickly. It became pretty obvious that we weren't suited to be married.
Right.
And, so the initial stages of the divorce, it was pretty tough being that far away from family members or people that were the really hardcore support system.
Sure.
But luckily at that point we had Skype, and I could call, I had quite a few conversations with family and friends, and they helped me a lot get through it. Life helped me a ton.
That's great.
And then George Wadenius came into the picture, and he ended up moving to Norway, married a Norwegian woman. And I had worked with George just a tiny bit in New York, and we hit it off and started hanging out. And then it slowly kind of snowballed into there being quite a few projects that were put together between Life, George, and myself.
And you started to play together as a trio.
Started playing together as a trio, started doing shows of George's. George is really well known in Sweden for his children's books and records.
Okay.
And like a household name. And
what instrument does he play?
He's a guitar player.
He's a guitar player.
Yeah, he's the guitar player that played on all the great mid-'80s Luther Vandross tracks. House Is Not a Home, Never Too Much.
Oh, wow. It's just amazing how like small the music community is, man. It blows my mind. There's like not 10,000 people in it, I don't think even.
It's mind-blowingly small. Yeah. And it's, whoops, sorry. I thought I had this off.
No worries, man.
Go away. But yeah, we'd go to Sweden, and we do these really fun concerts. It was usually Life, George, one other guy, myself. George might go a day early and rehearse with a church choir of kids, because they're kids songs. But the way that he wrote these songs, a lot of them were in odd time signatures.
Okay. But
they were so catchy, it didn't sound like an odd time signature. So we do concerts in schools or churches, and these kids just totally lit up singing these songs that they grew up on.
Right.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So what was your state of mind? You're there, like, at this point, how long had you been in Norway?
I'd been there for 4 or 5 years. I was about half through my length of stay that I ended up living there.
What was your mindset at that point in time? Were you like, well, I'm enjoying myself, my new life in Norway, or I'm going to be going back, I just don't know when? Because I couldn't imagine. That's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very not common. It's a very uncommon thing to do. Like, what's your frame of reference for that? Sort of like, I've moved to another country really far on the other side of the world, Yeah.
I don't know. There's something very odd about me.
There's something odd about all of us, I assure you.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes I will choose the more difficult way, and or the more challenging way. I don't know what it is, just to test myself and see if I can do it.
Okay.
And I don't remember when I moved to Norway. I knew Belinda, my ex-wife. I knew some people over there, and I just thought I can always move back if it doesn't work. And
So
So
it's just another adventure, like you were in midway through your adventure, is what.
pretty much what it was. But as I would say 5 years into it, fully, I got through. It's mandatory that you're separated for a year there, and then you can sit down and have a cup of coffee, sign your divorce papers, and that's it.
Wow, wait a minute. You can't get divorced so you've been separated for a year.
Yep. Yeah, it's a mandatory 1 year separation to make sure that the government wants to make sure that you've thought through it.
Okay, so I would imagine that lowers the rate of divorce because you won't get married knowing that. Because if you got the slightest hint, like having to still be married, it feels like you need, if you're unhappy, it feels like you need a fucking shower like all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That year of being separated was very odd.
Yeah.
You feel like you're basically being put on hold.
Yeah.
And of course,
wow.
I had no interest. All I wanted to do was get on with my life and transfer myself from where I was living to living in Oslo.
Yeah.
And sort of get back on my own 2 feet without being in a relationship. So not being with somebody, that was fine. I didn't want to be with anybody, but it's like having baggage holding on behind you. And
yeah, it's like weights.
Yeah. So
is it still like that?
As far as I know.
That is wild. That's really different.
Yeah.
I bet you they have a low divorce, much lower than us here, because people won't get married.
Yeah. I don't know what the statistics are.
Wow. That's really interesting.
What you're saying makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's a very different place over there. And the people that are, the cost of living is very high. Taxation is really high. So when you're married, it's, unless you're in a very, I would say maybe the upper 10%, both the mother and the father, the wife, the husband, you have to work.
Yeah.
It's the only way to be able to afford like a reasonable lifestyle. And you work all the time.
Wow.
I mean, I've never worked so much in my life as when I did when I lived over there. And I think the lowest tax bracket that I was in over there was 47%.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And that wasn't that wasn't the highest. And I think Denmark even has higher tax brackets than they used to. Yeah.
Ouch. That's nuts, man. Holy. And in return for that, I'm sure you get what? Free medicine, free what? What
Pretty
else?
close. It's free
healthcare.
Yeah, it's free healthcare. It's I only had one situation where I had to have surgery, and you go to your doctor, and he assesses what you're struggling with, and he decides if you need to take time off from work. I mean, let's say, for example, I was working in the restaurant industry. I mean, managing a restaurant, you don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. It's just overseeing the environment, the workers, and orders and that kind of stuff. But they have a thing where they give you a sick note, is what it's called, and they'll write, Dr. So-and-so is asking for Pete Abbott to be given 3 months off so that he can get the surgery that he needs, recuperate, and then get back to work. Well, I mean, these sick notes, you can imagine how people take advantage of them over there.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And there's no restrictions. If you have a sick note from a doctor and you want to go hop a plane and go down to the south of Spain and hang out for a week or 2 weeks, nobody's got a problem with that.
And so the government, and you get paid for your salary. So that's why you're paying a 47%. Wow.
Yeah. You're getting, while you're sick noted, you're getting 97% of your salary.
That is crazy, man.
Paid by the government. Yeah.
That's a moral, like in this country, I used to sell insurance. That's what I know. They call it a moral hazard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because think about it. You're incentivized not to work
Exactly.
at 97% of your wages. Wow, that is really interesting. Totally different culture.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew people, and they just kind of got burnt out a little bit. Went to their doctor, and the next thing I knew, they had 2 months off, and
they were in the south of France.
They were in the south of France. Yeah,
getting paid. Getting paid.
So I mean, you want to talk, high taxes, but you look at the amount of money that is being wasted.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad environment to be over there. It's a beautiful place. It's the winters can be long and kind of dark, but other than that, everybody's doing the same thing. So if you get a person that doesn't like their individual job, they'll use it as an escape. They'll go to the doctor and say, I don't know what's wrong. I don't feel well. Okay, here's your piece of paper. Go do whatever you want to do for the next 3 months. And maybe they have changed it. Yeah, I was pretty blown away when I saw that. And
what's amazing is they give you 97% of your salary. That's what's amazing.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think it's the first 3 days that you have this sick note, your employer pays you 100% of your salary. And then it goes to a government office, sort of a welfare office. Yeah.
That's wow. I didn't even spend so much time on that though, but that is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. All right. So you start playing with George in life.
Yeah.
And then what was the trigger that made you say, I need to get back to the States? Because it sounded like things were picking up there musically, at least, and you were at least happy career-wise.
The reason why I stayed for 9 years, the last 4 years, I had really good work. I had a lot of really good friendships, and very, what do I want to say? Diverse range of friendships. And there's a guy that lives there, very talented guy, and he hired me to play on his record. And while we were doing it, this is where Rebekka Bakken comes in. He had Rebekka sing on a duet on that record, and she said, I need another drummer some of the time. Would you come out? And the drummer that was doing the gig, this guy's monstrous. He's great. He does anything that's of worth over there. Per Lindvall's going to do, and flooringly good musician and drummer. And so anyway, I started subbing for Per on Rebekka's gig, and that was fun. We'd fly out in the morning, and we'd be in the south of France, or we'd be in Greece, or we'd be in wherever, play a gig that night, fly back the next day, paid well, and it's hard to give that up once you've gone through, the period of time getting all over your hurdles with your life and getting to a point where people start wanting you to go do shows like that. And it basically was the desire to move back to the United States and live here had to start outweighing my desire to live in that world and keep doing the gigs that I was doing in Norway. And it did eventually. And
That's a great deal. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's, when you're here, you're doing a weekend gig, you're going to Shamokin, Pennsylvania. I mean, you're like in Europe, you're going to the south of France, you're going to, the Greek islands or something like that. Shit.
Oh my God. It was so much fun, and a lot of these festivals, so many great musical acts.
Yeah.
And people, I'd run into Billy Cobham all the time. And, he was working in this band with Dieter Lockwood and I think that's who it was. And, and you're in these different places, and the cuisine and the culture and the people. And I mean, for a musician that likes to travel, you can't beat that, because every time you go out on the road, it changes.
And you're still single, or you're single again now.
Yeah, I was single.
Which ain't a bad deal.
Yeah. It's just being free and going, okay, finally that monkey's off my back and I can really concentrate on what I want to do. Let me get back to what I know how to do.
Yeah.
And really pursue it. And all the pieces of the puzzle kind of fell into place.
why did your desire to suddenly move back here outweigh your desire to keep enjoying that lifestyle there?
Gut feeling.
Yeah.
My gut. The more I would travel to the States and return to Norway, the more I did not want to return to Norway.
Okay.
And it didn't have anything to do with friendships, relationships, anything like that. It just was, I love the US.
Just miss being home.
And I miss being home. And I can identify with the lifestyle in the US and being able to be just a complete free individual.
Yeah.
Make my own decisions about what I want my life to be about. And Norway is certainly in a bad place to live. You know,
Sure.
It's got a lot of pluses, and being used to living in the United States, I didn't like it as well as the United States.
Well, God, and I certainly think who the hell would want to go through that divorce thing a second time with another year? I mean, that is I've been divorced. That's like a fucking penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to get divorced. It's not because if you've gone through the whole thing, you're uncertain. You don't need a year to make sure you're really certain. You could go 6 weeks would be pretty much, holy shit. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah. They've got some different ways about, how much the government's involved in your life. And to a reasonable degree, it's not that bad.
Yeah. What's frame of reference too?
Yeah, it's not like living in a communist state, anything like that. It's basically I would call it a social democracy more than anything. Putting labels on things these days is a little bit more difficult than it used to be. But I was hoping you were going to laugh at that. Oh my God, it's
just a little
bit.
God. Holy shit. We're just having a moment here. Sorry.
We need more of these moments.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What was the best thing about your with your interview with Craig? It's got gust-busting laughs at stupid shit that I said.
Oh my God. So many things go through my mind as you say. Okay. Okay. So you moved back. Was there like a trigger, or just like it was just time?
Yeah, it was basically this empty feeling in, whatever you want to call it, your gut, your soul, where it's like I don't want to be this far away from my family.
Yeah, I was gonna say your parents and your brother must have been thrilled when you came back.
I think they were pretty happy, and I don't know what they went through when I moved over there. I think they probably just understood that it was something that I had to do. And it's certainly all, I mean, now we're on the backside of it, so it's all resolved in the wash. But I mean, being in Nashville, I'm 2.5 hours from Denver, which is where my parents and my brother live. And my brother was just here, spent 4 days with me. And
cool.
And I go, the first 4 or 5 years, I go back to Norway once or twice a year to work, which then gave me access to seeing all my friends and seeing
it's like a paid for vacation, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
And that it doesn't happen of course now it doesn't happen, but it will happen again.
It will for sure. I mean, things are opening up, so it will happen again for sure, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, your parents are like, I love my kids. They're, I like everything. They're always pains in the ass, but if they moved, I was telling you earlier, they're 10 minutes away, and we would like to move, but we're not, only because of our kids.
Yeah.
It'd be, I wouldn't, I wouldn't feel good at all not being around them. Yeah.
What do your sons do?
My older son is in mobility. So he deals with getting people set up in wheelchairs. And working with people for the long-term like healing process of spinal injuries, basically.
Right.
And now he just moved into a sales capacity there. And my younger son went back to college later in life. He's going to be a physical therapist. He's got a good story, man. He was born as a preemie and has CP, mild. I think it's a mild case, but he has it. Obviously, you see when he walks. And man, he competed in 4 sports. He lettered in 4 sports. He finished dead last every race he ever ran, but he finished every one of them.
Good for him.
Yeah, he should be like a motivational speaker. Wasn't ready to go to college as a kid. Was working, lives on his own, pays all his own bills. Went back to school he's going to be a physical therapist now because he like pay it forward because he got a lot out of physical therapy when he was a kid. So he wants to pay it forward. He's like an angel. That kid. He's a real good. Takes after my wife. Trust me, not me. He's just a very good. Not that I'm a bad human being, but he's angelic in his. He gives to a fault, sort of.
I would think there'd be a somewhat of a connection there between, being a motivator and being involved in physical therapy, because you're trying to help people get through something that they're struggling with, no matter, if they're just sitting at home and working on a computer, or if they want to compete in triathlons, or
he's like that. Yeah. He's very he's always, pushing and
good.
He's done. I'm really proud of him. He's a great kid. He's my hero. Both. He really is. And then my daughter's just, got some job. She's just having fun right now. She's only 21 though. She's got plenty of time. She's a very cool person though. She should like run a company. She's really smart.
I think a lot of kids, from doing a fair amount of teaching and listen to what they struggle with, it's not a bad idea at all for a kid, say in between high school and college. What do they call it? Taking a gap year. They've got different names for it.
They should, man. It's like you got your whole life to work.
Yep. And go meet people. Meeting people is really the biggest thing, because you meet and you talk to people. Maybe you get an opportunity to work in an environment that you didn't think you would ever set foot in. And all of a sudden, a window opens up. And maybe it's a relationship that won't benefit you right then and there, but it'll benefit you later on in life. And you just sort of nurture that, being able to communicate with that person, and things sort of, they come back, and you can, maybe that personal benefit from you. It's interesting. There are a lot of younger people that don't think about this, and they're not encouraged to think about it and to go out. It's like, well, you don't have anything going on. Are you going to sit in your room and play video games? Or are you going to go out and offer to help somebody?
Right.
Look at just your immediate environment, say in 1 square mile. I guarantee you can find something to do that's going to benefit or help somebody else. And then in the context of doing that, you're going to have a conversation. You're going to meet them. Maybe it'll last 5 minutes. Maybe it'll last a half an hour. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but man, I agree with you. I'm totally for experimenting. And what's interesting with my kids is I didn't have the same childhood as they did, but I didn't pursue things I liked. But so I was always working, actually, until I started this show, and until I met all of you great musicians who changed my life. Now I only do things I like. I always just did things to earn a living. And I always worked for myself for 20 years, but I was doing projects to make money. I never thought about, man, what's my passion? All of my kids are involved in things they like. And I'm so grateful for, and now of course I talk to them about how important that is, but on their own, they did that. And I'm so grateful that they didn't just pursue things for money. Again, different childhood. They had the, I didn't have the freedom to make those decisions. They did. And I'm really glad for them that that's how it worked out. That's what I'm.
Well, congratulations, man. That says a lot about how they were raised.
My wife does all the credit.
Well, you're a very personable person, so I would imagine has quite a bit to do with you as well. The yin and yang of marriages and how they can work and be very successful.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I've worked hard, so believe me, that's probably the thing I'm proudest of about myself. My biggest difficulty was getting along with people for the first 20-something years of my life. So
you?
Oh God, yeah.
Wow, you don't strike me that way at all. But I know people are different in different stages of their life.
Yeah. Well, I had a rough upbringing, so it was I had to learn how to not be rough.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn everything everything I grew up in. And I didn't know I knew the wrong things to do. So I had to learn the right things to do. So
would you consider that a Bronx tale?
Oh, I don't know. Look, there's plenty of people who have a lot worse than I did. I'm just very grateful everything worked out and I'm in a good place. And, honestly, my wife has been a big influence. We've been together almost 30 years. I mean, that I'm with her is a miracle. I mean, I'm from the Bronx. She's from a little village in England. What's the chances? I mean, that we even have that we'd even cross on the same street block,
I got to ask, how'd you guys meet?
Business. I used to sell insurance and she was the VP of operations of this company. I met, provided great customer service, and there you go.
Wow. Very cool.
It's almost 30 years. Yeah, man. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so so it's just, it was, I had a lot of work to do. So, but I did it, and I'm still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to be doing it,
Oh, it's a good feeling if you're doing something that you like and, putting in the work and a good long day and you get done. There really isn't a better feeling. I don't think.
I agree with you. And I've learned so much of that from you guys, because all of you guys, nobody goes into music to like, I'm going to make a fuck ton of money. Let me be a drummer. Said no one ever, not that you don't make good money and you can't have a great life, but that's not why you're doing this. Even if you're good at it, that's not why you're doing it.
That's why you have so many people going, why don't you ask for more money? Really? You're going to do that gig and it only pays $100? Yeah, but you don't get it. You don't understand what I walk away from in that situation. And, a lot of times it's just, well, would I rather be working with a couple of guys or women or whoever's in the band and have a great, it's a social environment. Secondly, if you can go and every time you play, I'm convinced you get better. You learn something when you play. And
well, look at the guys you're playing with. You're walking off stage with Oblon, Victor Krauss, Dave Rowe, Pat Bergeson. I mean, Mike Rhodes, right? Is that his first Mike? Is that his first name?
He prefers Michael.
Michael Rhodes. Like what? I mean, that's like you. I mean, they're thinking the same thing walking away with you. So it's like, that's pretty cool.
It is. I lucked out moving to Nashville when I was the age that I was. How old was I? I wasn't 50 yet. 47. No, I'm sorry. It was before that. I've been here for 14 years, but I had a friend, Laurie White. She was an extraordinary musician and singer. And unfortunately, we lost her about 3 years ago to cancer.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Oh.
Laurie's actually from, what area of Florida? Not too far from Clearwater, maybe?
Yeah, that's right over the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so sorry.
And we went to school together. So when I moved here, she was actually somewhat.
You went to University of Miami together?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Laurie was one of these really highly driven human beings. I mean, she had her eye on the ball from the get-go. And I knew her in school. We didn't spend a ton of time together, but I came over to visit and I just called her up and she said, "Oh, I'm sitting here. Why don't you come out? And there's a little bit of tequila left." She said, "I won't drink it."
That's cool.
And but in our conversation, she said, if you're going to do anything as a drummer here in Nashville, there's one person that you have to meet and hopefully you guys will get along. And it's Michael Rhodes. And he's become, he's my older brother.
He's such a great player, man.
He's wicked. You can't move to a town and there's so many, I could list you 5 phenomenal drummers that he has worked with for years, probably more than that. But I took what I could get. And, when you move to a new place, you have to make your own way. You can't ask people for things.
Right.
It's not the way it works. And it certainly doesn't work that way in Nashville. And I thought I'm just going to become, whatever kind of a friendship I can have with him, I'll take it. And we ended up getting put on a session together. I don't know how I got put on it. I don't think I'll ever know. And it was Tom Bukovac and Michael Rhodes and Mike Rojas. I mean, these guys are the cream of the crop.
For sure.
I was pretty new to town, and I just kind of kept my distance, and slowly we started. Every now and then we'd get something, or I'd get work because Chad Cromwell was out on the road. He was still doing Neil Young's gig, and Michael was nice enough to recommend me. And but what came of it, you know, he's been doing Joe Bonamassa's gig for quite a while, and it's a great gig for him. And I don't know how long he'll continue to do it, but in the course of however many years, our friendship just developed where it was, you get to that point where you kind of look after one another.
Huh.
And he knows that I have his back, and I know he's got my back. And it's great to know somebody like that, and it not to be dependent upon the musical relationship that we have.
Right.
We've done a lot of cool things together. And we used to have this trio with a great guitar player, Guthrie Trapp. And we did a bunch of stuff with that. But I'll tell you what, I value the friendship more than anything.
What made you come to Nashville? Because I didn't think about that. You were older. That is another ballsy move.
It was Laurie. She just said, trust me, Nashville's a great place. It's growing like a weed. It's not just country music. And the cost of living when I moved here was very good.
Yeah.
I think the first apartment that I rented was, I had parking, utilities were paid, and it was $650 a month.
Oh my God, boy, have things changed.
Yeah. And, and, you know, I thought if I move to Nashville and I don't like it, I'll just move again. I'd moved so much, you kind of get used to the process. But once I started to build relationships and build a career and search out guys that were playing music that I really enjoyed playing, which that basically what I grew up on was a certain amount of jazz, but a lot of rhythm and blues, old school rhythm and blues. Well,
you got Oblon and Pat. Those are like, and you know, it's interesting. They both have kind of their tone is not dissimilar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they play it differently, of course, but the tone of their guitar is not, you know, they have that warm, full, round tone, both of those guys.
Yeah. But I mean, drastically different rigs.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and and different influences. You know, the other thing, have you had Pat on your show?
I did have Pat on my show.
Oh my God, man. He and I are really good friends as well. And he, not only is he a wicked guitar player, but his harmonica playing, I put him up against anybody with both instruments, but his harp playing is just off the charts.
Were you playing with him for that Nashville guitar community conference? The one that was really late. It was like 5 hours long.
No, I didn't do that.
Let me tell you, he taught me something that night. It was the Nashville guitar community is an organization in Nashville, and they put on a little show, and they had asked me to come up and like sort of MC it and just introduce people. And it was very kind to them. And it was great for me because I got to meet so many people that had been on the show, and Pat was one of them. Now, Pat was the headlining act, you know, because he came on last. And you know, it was their first program, and everything went much longer. So he didn't come on until like almost 5 hours into the thing. And it's not a festival. So it's like, there were not many people. And this is a guy who's played Carnegie Hall. He played with Chet, you know, Tommy Emmanuel. He's the real deal, as you know.
Yep.
And he gets up there. I don't think there was 10 people in the audience. And he goes, I just want to thank all of you guys so much for sticking around. And I'm going to work my best to make sure you have a great time over the next, you know, hour or whatever he played. And just the level of professionalism in a situation where, I mean, this is Pat Bergeson. He's, you know, he doesn't need to be there. He's done major, and he treated everybody. You know, I always say you learn more about how somebody treats the waiter than their boss.
Right.
Right. And that was a perfect example. And I walked up to him at the end of the show. I said, man, you just taught me or you know, it was just such a pleasure to see how you handled that whole thing, man. You're like just a first class human being. It was so, you know, that takes a lot to do that.
That's Pat.
Yeah.
Pat, I've never seen him not once, and we have spent a ton of time together, never seen him delineate between somebody that's working this kind of a job, somebody that has this kind of a life. Everybody he treats the same way.
Yeah.
That I admire and respect greatly. And you know, we've been working with this soul singer, Charles Walker, here in town, and
Charles Wig Walker, is that the guy?
Charles Wig Walker.
Yeah.
And you know, it's done a little bit of traveling, not a ton, but Pat, even if there are 3 people in the audience, it doesn't matter to Pat. You know how some guys will kind of let down, and it's like they're not getting a lot of energy because there are a few people that are attending the event. And Pat, he doesn't care.
He ripped. He crushed it. I mean, he absolutely destroyed. I mean, everybody was like their jaw. He was just brilliant. I mean, as always, you know, it was just so classy. I'll never, ever forget that. It was the best, kindest, most classy and compassionate thing, excuse me, I've ever saw someone on stage do.
He, I'll share a funny story with you if he didn't already share it. He, whenever we've had a show that is out of town, let's say it's in Memphis or, you know, 150 to a 300-mile drive, I'll be thinking, oh, this will be fun. We'll all jump in the same car and make the drive, do a hang, go play music, eat some good food, drink some wine, come back. And Pat, I said, hey, what time do y'all want to leave? Let's figure out a car to take. And Pat, like, no, I'm going to drive myself. And the reason why he does this, it's not that he doesn't want to be in the car with us. He wants to practice harp.
And, so he plays all the way up there.
Oh my God. Like, wow. I hired him for a session one time, I don't know, little session. It was down in Franklin, Tennessee, about 14, 15 miles from here. And it got to be 10 o'clock and he wasn't there yet, which is not like Pat. And so I called him just to make sure he was okay. And I said, hey, do you need directions? Are you lost? Or, you know, is everything okay? And he goes, oh, he starts laughing. He said, oh yeah, man. He goes, I was practicing harp and I just blew right by the exit. I'm 5 exits down.
Oh, wow. That's funny. Yeah. Everybody raves about his harp playing.
Oh yeah. It's, you know, absolutely both his guitar and harp playing, but it's, Pat will, you know, Pat has no ego, except for what drives him to become better and better. But me personally, I mean, I haven't heard, you know, there's Toots Thielemans, there's Stevie Wonder, Charlie McCoy. There are a couple other guys that are in that realm, but I mean, it's amazing what he can do. And he plays chromatic harp on a blues harp.
He told me he gets hired.
Embouchure.
That's amazing. That I didn't know. That's pretty crazy. But he told me he gets hired for more or as many harp sessions as guitar sessions. Of course, this is before COVID, but I don't see any reason why that would change.
Yeah, if we just did a little custom record for a guy up at Dave Rowe's studio, and Pat was on it, and I told this guy, I said, you should have him play harp on a couple of songs, and I think he ended up putting harp probably on 5 or 6 songs.
Yeah, that's great.
It's his sound and his approach. Guy can do anything on that little instrument. Just blows my mind.
I have to listen to some. What record would you recommend that I listen to that he's on?
You know what? I can ask Pat and I can text you.
Yeah,
I don't know the records. If you go onto YouTube and you look up Pat's name, you know, there's some stuff. A couple of concerts with Michael McDonald that Pat's a part of. Some of the stuff with, I'm sure he told you all about how he ended up in Nashville through Chet Atkins.
Chet, yeah.
Yeah. And
he was in New York. He was in Brooklyn doing like bar mitzvahs on the weekend or something like that. And he's had like his apartment was falling apart. It was roaches and Yeah, he said it was like the best phone call he ever could have gotten.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he's earned it. Hardworking guy.
Check it out. Give me what are the top 3 tough question musical experiences that you had, and what made them so fun or memorable?
Well, I would say one, Average White Band got hired for the first Sinbad Soul and Funk Jam.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so they flew us to St. Martin.
That's awful.
The Caribbean. It was horrible. We were crying the entire way.
Yeah.
You know, at least up until we got the first drink in us on the airplane. It was so cool because that was the inception of the whole thing. So it was Gladys Knight, Earth, Wind and Fire, Frankie Beverly, and Maze, which if anybody out there is not aware of Frankie Beverly, man, he is something else. Oh my God, I'm spacing on the name of the band. They did For the Love of Money. I'll think of it. Can't believe I'm forgetting the name of the group. But anyway, we ended up playing the first night. They had us down there for almost a week.
Wow.
So there was a press day and then 3 consecutive nights, and they flew in the stage and all the sound gear. Claire Brothers did the sound. And once it was all put together and I saw the final product, I don't know, a couple months later, the sound was great.
That's awesome.
And it's one of the first things that I've done live where I was really happy with the sound of the whole band, but the sound of the drums. You know, you'll get like a clicky bass drum and things stick out. And the Claire Brothers, man, whoever engineered it, mixed it, just did a fantastic job.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah. If you look up Cut the Cake, Average White Band, that's the first. We played Schoolboy Crush, Cut the Cake, and Pick Up the Pieces. There's so many acts down there. You only had a small window of opportunity, but you know, we played, band sounded great, got done with the show. And then we had the next 2 nights to go hear all these great acts, and Ohio players were there. And, you know, you're meeting these people that you grew up on this music, and you're meeting them in a good, healthy environment where there's, it's sort of a mutual respect. Is just a natural part of that environment. Instead of going to a show, they don't know who you are. They haven't heard you play. And I think Sinbad was really smart. He had all the bands come down at the same time, had them in close proximity at hotels. And that is the easiest environment to go up and say, man, it's great to meet you. I grew up on all your records. And the person says, well, what are you doing here? I'm playing with the Average White Band, or I'm playing with the Isley Brothers, or whoever the group is. And they perk up. They want to have a conversation. It's really hard when you meet somebody, at least for me, because I don't want to bother them. I know they get gurmed all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, and what am I going to say to them that is different from what anybody else has said to them? So if it's a professional environment, then I look forward to that, because you can take advantage of having a good conversation with somebody that you wanted to meet and you wanted to, you know, talk life or a little bit of shop or have a good laugh with.
You know what, though? I've been with, maybe I'm just fortunate, like when guys come through town here, you know, they're very kind. They always invite my wife and I out to the show, and, you know, we usually hang out before or after or both. And it always amazes me. Like REO Speedwagon was here last week. So Dave Amato is a guitar player. I've known him. We've become friends through the show. I talk to him on a fairly regular basis. And a woman sort of like, we got put behind he said, hey guys, we went behind this gate, and my wife was like, Dave, that woman wants to take your picture. And he goes, oh, that's totally fine. And so most of the guys I've met, and I say guys and gals, are very like, hey man, that's totally cool. They came here. They're paying for my they're putting gas in my tank. Yeah, you want to take a picture? Heck, sure. You want to come over here and I'll just, take it together. And maybe it's different today than it was years ago, but most people today most musicians seem incredibly grateful to do what they do and to have that, opportunity. And they're very cool with opening up.
I think they are, and I would think, geez, how many years has REO Speedwagon been around? That was my girlfriend in high school. That was her favorite band. That's what I have to go on.
Well, he's been in the band 32 years, and what's his name? Gary Richrath was the original guitarist for 5 years, 8 years, or something like that. Yeah. So 45 years, let's call it. The band's been around.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's
So I would think, to be able to make a living off of, the music of a band that your heart was in.
Yeah.
That you were and still are a part of. It's I don't think there are too many musicians that would take that for granted.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Or think, God, I played these songs so many times, I'd rather be working in a Walmart. I don't think that happens very often.
No, especially nowadays, because the opportunity to play out is fewer and far between, unfortunately. Right. So yeah. Okay, so that's average cool. White band at the Sinbad Soul Jam. Give me two more.
The first show, I got to work with Tom Jones for a brief stint, which I don't know. All told, it was maybe the span of time from when I got hired to when they basically, if I remember right, they said, we don't care where you live, but we want everybody to be living in the United States. So that if they traveled abroad, they would be flying everybody out the same direction. And
now he's Scottish or he's Welsh, right?
He's Welsh, yeah. And the first show was over in Dublin, Ireland, and a friend of mine was his musical director, Brian Monroe, great guitar player, and he just called me up and he said, "I know you're going through a divorce. We're changing drummers. Do you want to do the gig?" And I said,
"This is when you were in Norway."
Yeah. Yeah, it was right after we had filed for a divorce. And I hadn't been playing that much. I was a little bit reluctant to do it because I didn't know exactly what was involved. It was a while since I had done a show of that stature. And I just said, yes, I'll do it.
Cool.
And no rehearsal. He sent me all the charts, and it's a show. I mean, everything is done. We didn't play to tracks. I didn't have to play to a click track, but the funniest thing was Brian would give me a tempo from his laptop. And the tempo was a little light that they attached to the drum cage, the cage that holds all the cymbal stands. And as the show went on, because of the vibrations of the drum riser, the light, it kept moving down. So it was harder and harder to see. So by 6 songs in, I'm like, and Tom is used to everything moving along at a clip. And at one point in time in the show, he goes, "All right, anytime now." And, when you don't do a rehearsal and you're going in, we had a little bit of a sound check. I met Tom and then we're playing the show. It's
stressful.
It is stressful because you're trying to keep track of all these things in your head. You're not exactly in a place where you can just go, my instincts will take over. The arrangements of the songs were new. I had charts and it went fine. There were no issues. And I talked to Tom after the show and I said, "Yeah, sorry, man, the little, metronome light, it kept moving on me and I couldn't see it." He laughed. Really nice guy. Very, I didn't get to spend a ton of time with him, but went out one night with him when we were in Ireland, and we did play a big show that was down in Cork.
Okay.
Big stadium. And I'll tell you, it's to go out on stage and have that many people, I think 15, 16,000 people. And Tom being Welsh and sort of being in the part of the world that, he came from. And these people were just eating it up and they were all singing with every single song we played.
That's a nice feeling.
Yeah. I could hear the audience almost better than I could hear Tom coming out of the monitors. And then, the other thing, which I've had a lot of great experiences, but when I first moved to New York, my second year in college, I wasn't at Miami. I was going to the University of Northern Colorado. And the guest artist for a week was Louis Bellson.
Okay.
And Louis, the director of jazz studies there, during one of our rehearsals, Gene said, Louis is going to need a ride from the Denver airport up to Greeley. We need somebody to take, and my hand went in the air way before anybody else's. And he said, all right, Pete, you're going to do it. And I thought, there is no better way. I got to do it with Louis, and I did it with Ed Soph, and both of them were just a blast to meet and to get to spend a little bit of time with. But Louis especially, he was unbelievably open, to the extent where I'd go pick him up at his hotel room and he'd be on the phone. He was married to Pearl Bailey. And
wow.
Yeah. And he'd be on the phone and she would be screaming and yelling at him on the other end of the phone. And it was just what I determined to be a private conversation. And I'd take 2 steps in the room and then I'd go, hey, Louis, I'll wait for you in the hall. And he's like, no, come in. It's fine.
No, listen to Pearl Bailey yell at me.
This is just normal, And so anyway, I guess I left a little bit of a good mark on him. And when I moved to New York, I think I'd only been there for about 3 months. I get a call from his road manager and he said, Louis got to have an emergency appendectomy, and we have a show in 3 days up in Danbury, Connecticut. Can you sub for him?
Wow.
Now, yeah, in your head, you're thinking, okay, if I say no, I'm stupid. I mean, you can't say no to a situation like that. But you're also thinking, yes, am I really stupid for actually agreeing to do this? Anyway, there was no rehearsal. They sent me the book, and there's a drum solo at the beginning, the middle of every song, and the end of every song. And it was the hardest gig I've ever done in my life. We were playing outside at an amusement park. The charts are like 10 pages front and back, metal stand, the wind's blowing, and you've got lead alto was George Young. I think Lou Delgado was on the gig. Jay Leonard was the bass player. All these guys, I knew who they were, but I'd never met them. And when we got done, George came up and he said, well, he goes, Pete, I got to tell you, he goes, either you're really stupid or you got really big balls.
Wow.
And I said, I hope I didn't make it too difficult for you guys. And he goes, you know what? We made it through without a train wreck. He said, that says a lot.
Wow. That's really cool.
And you go away and you're kind of going back through your mind thinking, okay, how could I have done better at this? How could I have prepared more? Well, there wasn't much time to prepare. And eventually my brain got to the point where you look at it as, one, it's an honor to sub for somebody of that. You can't sub for a Buddy Rich or a Louis Bellson or, those guys are solo artists. And as well as being machines that drive big bands. But I'd had so much experience at that point playing big band music that the charts, they weren't difficult. It was the energy and the ability to take on not playing just the role of a drummer, but playing the role of a soloist. I don't like drum solos. I'll tell you that. That's right now.
Soloing, man.
Oh man, I love being in the back, and I love being a part of, what I think Michael Rhodes was the first one that just refers to it as the engine room.
I've never heard that.
Yep. It's a great engine room. Great expression.
Totally.
Yeah. You can give him the credit for that one. I don't know if it comes from somebody else, but when you're working in the rhythm section, whether it's on a record or playing live and the pieces fit together and each individual understands what their responsibility is, to me, there's no better feeling. It just works. And
it's so cool.
It's effortless. And that's basically what I love about music. I'm not all about maybe something that add some spice to a song, you know, once here, once there, but the basic feel of the song and how it sits, so that whoever's singing the song or whoever's written it, the song is served to its best, you know, or at least to the best that you can serve the song.
Well, whatever you're doing is right, because like I said, I've had at least a dozen people mention your name here. So, I mean, well, like guys like Pat, that, you know, nature. Yeah. So,
well, I have lost a lot of money in the last couple of years having to pay these guys off.
No. Hey, tell me what is the last thing you listened to musically, like on your, wherever you listen to music?
Well, last time I listened to music was last night, and I stumbled upon something that it's not in my wheelhouse. It just struck me as being very interesting, and it's a band called Icefish.
Okay.
And it's Virgil Donato. Is his name Virgil Donati?
What kind of music is it?
Prog / metal.
Okay.
I guess that's the best way to describe it. I looked them up. It's just 4 guys. Guitar.
Isn't Wikipedia like the best?
Yeah.
Like
Wikipedia is a great starting thing.
Yeah, it's a starting. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. And
Icefish. Where are they out of?
Hold on 1 second. Let me look at this. Because this guy Virgil, man, he's a beast. He's one of these guys, you know, he can play 7 in his right hand, he can play 3 in his right foot, he can play 4 on his hi-hat, and then, you know, be soloing with his left hand. I'm being a little bit facetious, but his command of the instrument is phenomenal. And in his musicality and how he approaches things, I've not spent a lot of time. I think first and foremost, and I might be completely wrong about this, but he was showing up in a clinic at a lot of clinics and educating people. And I think trying to show people just, hey man, you don't have to stop at this. You can keep working with the instrument and go as far as you want. And yeah,
Icefish. All right, I'm going to check them out.
Let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, and I just stumbled upon it, and they had this song, and it just, you know how you'll hear, yeah. There it is. Yeah, Icefish. But you know, my normal go-to is almost anything that Gadsden played drums on. And a lot of days, if I get in the car, I don't listen to music. I like listening to, I'm a huge fan of this gentleman, Thomas Sowell, who is I would call him a black scholar intellectual. And
oh yeah, Sewell.
Sowell.
Oh, yeah.
I like I just like him. I love listening to him. He's
smart dude.
Very, very smart. And from there, it's kind of trickled down into a younger generation of people that really have spent a lot of time educating themselves about how our whole system works and the discrepancies, you know, the problems and that cause racial divides. And there's a young guy, Coleman Hughes is his name. And strikes me as being a very sort of a gentle human being, but wickedly smart. Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, and I like their presentations and what they have to say and how knowledgeable they are. And so I'll go to something like that a lot of times before I'll put music on. And
do you typically listen on like on YouTube? What are you listening to all this stuff on generally?
I'll listen to it on YouTube, and if I like it, I'll go buy it.
No, I mean like these guys like Thomas Sowell. What do you listen to stuff like that on?
YouTube?
Like on YouTube. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's I haven't really searched out another format to listen to them on. I mean,
I don't know, I don't know if they podcast or anything.
They probably do. I think Glenn Lowry has a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Coleman being of a younger generation, he probably does. But yeah, I think John, I think McWhorter is a linguist professor at Columbia University up in New York. And I'd much rather listen to somebody like that than a politician.
Oh my God. If it's anything than a politician, it's just like,
yeah,
you might have a chance that it doesn't have an agenda.
Exactly.
Do you have a worst gig ever story?
Oh man. I'm sure there's one out there. All right. I have one that is the actual playing of the gig wasn't bad, but the circumstances and where we had to get to the next day. So there's a band here that Charles Wig Walker was the lead singer in called the Dynamites. It was more of a Dyke and the Blazers / James Brown type of a band, more high energy. And the guy that put the band together, he'd get us really good tours of Europe and Australia. So we were over in Spain, and we had been up in, I think, Switzerland and Austria, and then we took a flight to Madrid, had to get to the west coast of Spain, which was about a 7-hour drive.
Ugh.
And then we did a run of 3 dates up the west coast. Remember that train crash that killed a bunch of people? That was, yeah. It was right when that happened. And so the last gig, we were scheduled to play from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning.
Good, man. That's a worse gig right there. Like
it's that's the way those festivals work over there. In the summertime, it's you got to be prepared to play late, and we weren't going to make our flight. So Bill got the guy to put us on at 1, and we played from 1 until about 2:45 in the morning. And then our flight out of Madrid was at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so there was a runner that took all of our luggage, got all the luggage to the airport, and got it set up so that it was organized so that when we got there, we could get checked in. Played the gig, you're all sweaty and you don't have time to change clothes, got in a car, drove almost 3 hours, and made it to the airport.
Must stink with all these sweaty dudes in there, man.
Yeah, and then got on one of those custom flights where the seats are pushed closer together so they can fit more people on them. And we had to fly to Italy. Once we got to Italy, we had a 4-hour drive to get to the gig, went to sound check, went back to the hotel, ate something, and then went and played the gig from 10 until midnight. And needless to say, that was our last gig. And then the next day we drove to Rome, and we flew out of Rome. But something happened with our flight, and we had a day off in Rome. And that was one of the nicest recuperation days that I can remember. But that kind of travel, I don't know if I had to do it, I could do it, but I wouldn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Playing a gig at 1 a.m. is great when it's Woodstock and you're 19,
Yeah.
That's rough, man. Wow.
But amazingly, and I don't remember how old Charles was at that point in time, probably 73, 74. He's 81 now.
And he was,
and my barometer was always him. And if he was hanging in there and he wasn't complaining, then there was no room for anybody else to complain.
Sure. And
he is badass. I did 2 runs of Australia with him, and he could drop his head and sleep on an airplane like nobody's business.
Really?
Yeah. And I told him, I said, if you could bottle that and sell it, you'd be rich.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly can't. Huh?
No, I can't either.
Pete, give me your top 3 desert island discs. Just no particular order and just for this moment.
Uh, something with Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, whatever orchestra, Philadelphia or New York. Bill Withers. I can't tell you the name of the record, but I can listen to Bill day in and day out. And probably Stevie Wonder Intervisions.
That Stravinsky, it's the first time I've heard that. That's a unique first.
You know, I've got a very, very good friend, and he's a classical clarinetist. He was associate principal of the New York Phil, and he had access to tickets all the time. And he would always call me up when if they were playing any Stravinsky or Aaron Copeland. He knew I love those composers, and for some reason, that music, I just like it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me something you want that you don't have now. It could be something tangible, but it also could be like a state of mind, a habit, or a change you want to adopt, or a new way of thinking or looking at something. Anything you'd like.
You know what? I'm gonna be a little bit what's the word? I'd like to have a house. I had put an offer in on a house right before pandemic hit. It was a really nice place. And then I found that a certain part of the addition, it hadn't been permitted. And
that sucks.
Yeah. So the recommendation of the inspection crew was don't take any chances. And
because it cost you thousands.
Yeah. It would have been the worst time to take on something like that. And I've started looking again, but I've got a really cool place, and I can record drums here and have a handful of studios available to do the same thing. But
the market's so ridiculous right now.
It's far from a buyer's market, isn't it?
So ridiculous. My wife has sold house. She's a realtor. I mentioned she's selling houses to people in California.
Mm.
She's like walks around doing a very detailed FaceTime. And they're like, I mean, they're expensive houses for here, but the frame of reference to California, it's like, God, it's a 25% of what I'd pay out here, and then I buy it, and then they just come in for the inspection, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's just nuts.
They're doing the same thing here.
Yeah. Yeah, but here's the good news. I think once they lift the moratorium on evictions, you're going to get some more inventory, and I think prices will drop. I mean, not that I'm an expert on it. I'm not a housing expert, but it's just supply and demand,
Well, I think, isn't there, there were 3 judges that just,
prevented them from lifting the moratorium.
Is that what they did?
I think so. Yeah. They said you can't do it, but it's going to happen at some point. It's likely this year.
Yeah.
So, I think the market, it's not going to be like in 2008 or anything, but I think the market it's just supply and demand. You have more inventory, prices have to drop.
Yeah. There are, here, what's been going on, this real estate agent that was helping me, she said, I can't tell you how easy it is to be a real estate agent right now, because these people, they have a lot of money and they're buying places sight unseen, no contingencies.
Right. No contingencies, no appraisals.
Right.
They're buying it, or else they're giving it. You have to, I'll pay you up to, 20, 30 grand above appraised cost.
Right.
Yeah. Not below, not like if it, if it cut it off. No, I'll pay you above appraised. It's a bad time to be buying a place, but I think it'll change for sure.
No, well, luckily I got a pretty cushy situation here. So I'm good until it happens. If it doesn't happen, there are a lot worse things in life.
Oh, hell yeah. But that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Best decision you ever made? You made a lot of them.
To move to New York.
You miss it?
I do. I love going to visit. It's changed a lot since I was there.
Sure.
But that was making the decision to New York. It solidified a path, and it was up to me to make the appropriate changes in my life and in terms of how to get through the masses of musicians up there. But it led me to so many good things and so many great relationships. So I'm glad I did it.
Good.
Yeah.
What was your favorite spot to eat in up there? If you have one, or if you remember it.
I don't think it's there anymore. There was an Indian place that was right across. It was called Havali. And it was right on 2nd Avenue. Literally, I could walk out my door, go across 2nd Avenue, and I was at the front door of the Indian restaurant.
That's the best part of New York, man. It's like access to everything.
It's immediate access,
Yeah, it's totally cool.
Yeah.
All right, tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
For the most part, I care. I'm more concerned about other people than I am about myself. Or maybe the better way to say it would be as equally concerned. My parents, they instilled that in me.
They were very kind people.
Very kind people.
That's good.
They would help anybody.
That's nice.
Yeah. 82 years old and they're still doing it. So.
Oh, they're still around. That's great, man. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, they're doing great.
Something about yourself people might be surprised to hear or they might find it a little odd. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I love golf almost as much as music.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I would say equally as much.
Who do you golf with in town? You play with Matthew Lee?
No. When I was working with Ashley Monroe, Ashley's married to a guy, great guy. He John Danks is his name, and he used to pitch for the White Sox.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
And John and I, we got to know one another, and then we started playing golf together. And it's a trip. These guys that were have been professional athletes, their whole game isn't quite together, but man, when they get up to hit the ball, they hit the living crap out of the ball. It's like it's almost a little bit demoralizing, but to me, it's more of a it's inspiring.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, he's a really natural athlete, really good guy, and there's a group around here that I'll go out and play with, and every now and then go out and pick up a game. But my dad started me when I was really young.
That's cool.
I will.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say my typical Sunday, if I don't have anything that I have to do and one of the majors is on, I'll sit and I'll watch golf for 4 or 5 hours.
Good for you, man. If it's relaxing. Well,
it's relaxing, but you also learn a lot from watching the pros play, how they manage their games, and how to hit shot shapes, and get into the little minutia of what makes a player great as opposed to just being good. But it's a sport. I'll work on it until the day I die.
Do you know a guy named Doug Bossy?
I know the name, but I don't think I know him.
He's a big golfer.
Yeah.
Lives in Nashville. Happiest moment or happiest time in your life? I like that question. I haven't asked it in a while.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I think spending a week on St. Maarten with the Average White Band and some of the greatest soul groups, R&B groups that I grew up with, and being able to go scuba diving 4 days in a row, that's
pretty cool.
I was very happy. Yeah.
That water is so nice and warm, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Amazing place. I mean, I've had a lot of happy moments, especially if it's something to do with I've had a couple of students that have done really well. And, you know, there's so much that comes from the individual, but if you've had a good influence on them. There's a guy that I taught over in, he lived in a city called Halden, Norway, and he's a huge producer here in the States now, and his stage name is Cashmere Cat.
That's a wild name.
Yeah, and anyway, he works a lot with his producer Benny Blanco, and they've done Kanye West and Selena Gomez and a lot of those types of acts.
Those are some pretty big names, man.
He's doing really well.
Cashmere Cat.
Yeah.
You have any non-musical superpowers?
Non-musical superpowers. You know, one of the things that I am quite good at is I'm quite a detailed person. And we were on a flight to Spain one time, and they had us routed to Madrid and then to Barcelona, only to have to go all the way back across the country to Bilbao.
Okay.
And I mean, you're talking way out of the way. So while we were on the plane, I kept looking at the itinerary and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. What's going on? Nobody else gave a rat's ass about it. It's like, well, that's the way they did it. It doesn't matter. And so I checked with the flight attendant and I said, can you find out, are we allowed to get off the plane in Madrid and just not use the second part of our leg? Because I said, these guys, they're coming from France. So they're just going to come pick us up on a tour bus and we're going to drive to Bilbao. She said, why are they flying to Barcelona over on the coast? And I said, because they didn't think it through. And, you know, I think I piss people off some of the time because if it involves me, I'll stick my nose in it and I'll go, yeah, there's got to be an easier way. But for some reason, my instincts when it comes to that type of detail and making sure it's the easiest route or the easiest, you're going to do A and then you're going to go here and you're going to do B and you're going to do C. I did a little, there was one act that I worked with out of Nashville and they actually hired me to do the tour managing as well. I didn't like it because I had to book plane flights and everything, but just looking at details and reorganizing them so that they are the most efficient. Your travel's the most efficient. It's most cost effective. It's
sure.
You know, that I wouldn't call it a superpower, but I have.
Well, it is if you're saving someone 6 hours on a plane.
Yeah, well, I like doing it.
That's cool. Well,
it's not a hassle for me. I actually enjoy doing it.
Well, engineers are super detailed, as you know, so you probably get that through your dad.
Yeah.
Do you have any besides golf? Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
I like a lot of sports. I played soccer growing up. You know, with AWB, when we were over in England, got to go see a couple of Premier League matches, and
that must be crazy, man.
Oh, it's nuts.
Are you watching that show, Ted Lasso?
No, you were. I think you told me about it though.
No, not me, because I just got turned on to it like very recently.
Okay, somebody else just told me about it, and
funny.
Oh yeah, it's I heard an interview with the main actor.
Yeah, it's I forgot his name.
He's an assistant coach of a soccer team.
He's a coach of a soccer team. He's an American coach of a football team, of a college football team. I think it's a successful college football team, and he gets recruited to be the coach of a Premier League team over in the UK. So it's just kind of funny. If you're into soccer, you would like it. Yeah,
I played all year round, you know, was quite serious about it. And
that's a tough sport, man. You got to have great cardio to do that, man. That is so difficult.
Yeah, but I was smart. I played goalie.
Still, man, I get it, but get what you're saying. Yeah,
my brother and I both played, but I love the sport. I love watching it. It is, I watch those guys run around and thinking, nah, I couldn't do this.
Tough, man.
Yeah. It's a young man sport.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the favorite place you traveled?
Oh, I'll tell you, I've really loved almost every place that I've gone, and they offer different things. But Prague,
Really? What do you like
Czech
about it?
Republic. The architecture of the buildings is just extraordinarily beautiful. The food, the people. Phil Ramone was recording strings on a record that was called Old Songs, New Friends, or Old Songs, New, something like that. And each artist did 2 songs, and he and an engineer and my friend Jill, who was his production coordinator, they flew over there, and she called me up and said, "You want to come hang out while we're doing the strings on this record in Prague for 4 days?" And I paid for my plane ticket, and basically Phil covered the rest of the trip. And
that's awesome.
So we'd hang out at the studio all day long, and he had the original scores. Peebo, I think it was Peebo Bryson, sang a version of oh God, I'm gonna forget. It's a great Burt Bacharach song, and he had the original score that Burt had written out in his handwriting, and so he just handed me the score and said, "Here, you can watch it go down while we're doing it."
That's cool, man.
And Brian Wilson sang on 2 songs. Peebo sang 2 songs. Carole King, I think.
Wow, these are some great vocalists, man.
Yeah, they'd already done all the singing, so obviously none of them were there. Yeah. But this is the Prague Radio Orchestra, and they were fantastic. That, one of my favorite instruments is French horn. In the right setting, it's just a beautiful instrument. And their French horn section, they had to play almost above, right at the end of their register, and they were so in tune. And it was just this pinnacle part in a piece of music. And hair on my arm stands up when I even think about it. It's, everybody has things like that where it drives something in your being that it's a moment of just pure joy when you hear it. And hearing that was like that for me.
That's great, man.
Probably part of it had to do with, being in the presence of Phil and
being in Prague.
In that whole environment.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Just a few more questions, and thank you for everything, man. I appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you. I've had a great time talking to you.
Oh, that's awesome. I knew we would.
Yeah.
I knew we would. Tell me a specific experience, Pete, that changed your life or changed the way you think about things.
That when Laurie died, that was it was interesting. It was a catalyst for me recognizing there were a couple other people that had passed away in my life that were important people, but I don't think I had processed the information as much as I needed to.
Right.
And she was really an amazing human being. And she's one of those human beings that everybody that met her, that talked to her, that had any sort of interaction with Laurie, they came away as a better human being.
That was the lady that got you to come to Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah. And she, I still, I'll work with her husband. She was married to Chuck Cannon, who is just a wickedly great singer-songwriter here in town. But she, we'd go out every now and then and, sit and sip on tequila and talk about life. And she had an interesting way of looking at things. And she was always about, and the one thing that I remember her saying that really had stuck with me is, to her, it was so important that you took care of your individual family situation, whether it was with your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, your kids. You take care of that at home, and you keep it in the home. You don't go outside and start sharing all this information with other people. And there are a lot of people that, I hear them, they talk shit about their partner, and they're very willing to, because they're frustrated inside. If they have a moment, or they've got maybe a little bit too much alcohol in them, all of a sudden they start spewing this information that's quite personal information. And she would never talk about what was going on in her own life, other than talking about life in general.
Yeah.
So I knew how she felt about things. The woman that I've been together with, she and Laurie were very, very, I would say, best friends.
Yeah.
And she just, it's a person that I miss greatly, and more because of those little periods in time where you can sit down, you can have a drink, or the families go on a trip, and you get to spend a little bit of time together, and you get into conversations that have more depth and more meaning than with the majority of the people that you interact with on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Well, it happens to all of us, but we were lucky to have her for as long as we had her. And, the way she went about her life and the successes that she had, they're good examples for people to follow and for people to be inspired by.
What I was thinking about when you were saying that, about how the people that talk about negatively about their spouses or partners, with probably 100% certainty, those are the ones that are on Facebook talking about how much they love their partners. I'm serious, man.
Yeah.
I know people that are in like shit relationships, and they're like, and it's like, what really cracks me up is when they're our age, right? And they're like, my hot wife or my hot husband. I'm like, it's great that you think that. Don't say that shit on Facebook. It's really good that you think that, if you really do think it, right? Which, it's good, but like, nobody cares. Maybe I'm insensitive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's when the little bit that I'll go on Facebook, it's like, nope, go away. Nope, go away. Yeah.
It's too much, man. It's like, biggest change in your personality, Pete, over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I think I have, over the last 10 years, I've become more accepting of people that go about life, do things differently, look at, and it can really have to do with anything from how they treat other people to how they think about religion or politics. The places where a lot of people get really hung up and have difficulties having a two-way conversation. And I went to, there's a place here in Tennessee called Onsite, and basically anybody can go there. It's not a rehab facility. It's a place where you can go spend 6 days, and you stay out there and you turn your telephone off and you sort of leave reality behind. And it's designed to nudge you just a couple of degrees and get you out of a funk, get you to see things different. They do have a program that's designed for couples. I know couples that have gone, and it's absolutely saved their relationships. Right. And I really learned a lot about what both good and bad, what I saw when I was growing up, learning how to handle situations a bit differently. There is some There are some small groups out there where you get to hear other people's stories. And I mean, there were people there from all over the world that flew in to be a part of this program. And I would say the biggest thing is it puts into perspective what your life has been about and what other people have had to go through and what they've had to struggle with. And then it encourages, recognizing things that might stunt your growth a little bit, might cause you to, what's the word I'm thinking of? When you keep running yourself into a wall, you don't know how to get over it. You don't know how to stop chewing on something and just go, okay, this is a negative thing. Let me get rid of it. And let me start moving in a positive direction. And I'll tell you, it was a very invaluable experience. If I could afford to do it once every couple of years, I go and do it every couple of years.
To whatever, if you're not comfortable answering this, that's totally cool. But what prompted you to go there? Again, only if you're comfortable answering that.
I felt like I was kind of in this place that I couldn't get out of.
In a bit of a funk?
I was doing gigs. I was, I'd gotten to a certain point in my career. It was taking a little bit of a toll on my relationship. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And I started going and I talked to somebody for a little bit and he helped me quite a bit. And then he was the one that, along with my girlfriend, made the recommendation, and they knew people that had gone through this program. I met so many interesting people, and it's a great environment with a lot of professionals that have done this their entire lives, and they can educate you and get you to kind of. It's like if you've gone down a little bit and it's a rare point in your life where you feel joy or you feel happiness.
Right. Okay.
And
which everybody should be feeling.
Yeah. And I got out of that program. When I went into it, it's just everything was sort of kind of closed in. And when I got out of it, the last day they spend with you, they talk to you a little bit, and then you're in this environment with all these people, and it's the difference. I mean, to all of a sudden feel open and available and be okay with whatever's going to happen in your life and want to go back to reality and approach it differently. That's what it did for me. And it basically got me out of a funk.
And thank you for sharing that. That was really cool.
Yeah,
I'm just going to mention a resource that I worked with that was phenomenal. I've talked about it on the show before. It's a yellow workbook it's called ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. I will tell you right now, it changed my life. I've been studying self-help and self-development for years. It's just a phenomenal resource. I always tell people the best $16 you'll ever spend on Amazon.
Tell me the name of it again.
It's a yellow workbook. It's called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And let me qualify, you don't have to have had an alcoholic parent, or you don't even have to have a dysfunctional family. But when you go through this book, at least for me, I had it. I didn't have an alcoholic, but he was an addict, a gambling addict. But I did have a highly dysfunctional family. So a lot of the stuff in the book was relevant, but a lot of stuff was not. But the insight it gave me into, and I've been trying to unwind this since my early 20s, but
right.
The insight this gave me into how I am programmed, how I think, is my whole life is different over the last 2 years since I've gone through the program. And phenomenal. I mean, I'm not preaching about it. Anybody listening, that's just been a great resource for me. If you have any stuff like what Pete was just talking about, I mean, I'm sure that on-site, this is just another reference that you can look at. So,
oh, that's great. I'll check it out. I think there are a lot of people that they can benefit, any type of spiritual work that you do, whether it's meditative, it's, writing in a journal,
Yes.
And I've had so many friends that I've talked to that asked me about the on-site program. And there's, boy, to your point, there's so much that you can do on your own, and there's so much information that you can access that's out there.
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes misconstrue needing a little bit of help for being a broken individual, and you're not that at all. And there's nothing. I think the healthiest individuals are the ones that they're looking at bettering themselves and working on themselves, and they don't get to a place where they just say, "Oh, I'm great the way I am." So, the places where I run into problems, that's this person's fault, or that's this. And
that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's just you can't play the blame game. And I think there's more that rests on your own shoulders if you're willing to take a good hard look at yourself, that you can fix pretty easily. And what it does is it gives you happiness and you joy, and then that rubs off on your relationship with your parents, your kids, everything. I mean, my whole family has changed since I've done that. And not because I've come home and said, "Hey, I need you all." Nothing. I never said a word. I just did my shit. And, but I know a lot of things here have changed. And I think a lot of them have come because, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, I had parts of me that were broken. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I mean, there's no way I couldn't have having the childhood I had. It'd be like literally impossible. Right. I mean, literally impossible. I mean, so I didn't care about that. I just wanted to fix them as much as I could this time, and then till the next chapter, or as the days go on, maybe I fix a little bit more each month, hopefully. So yeah, it's the people that don't want to do the work to fix what's going on in them that end up running into more severe problems. I think I've got all the admiration and respect in the world for anybody that wants to. Doesn't matter in what capacity. If you want to better yourself, to make your relationship better, or you make yourself better, make it easier for you to look at somebody that maybe at one point in time you're going, "Oh man, that guy's an idiot," and now you can look at him going, "Oh, he's having fun."
Right.
Good for him. Or
you could look at him and say, "Man, I'm really sad for that guy. He needs this program," or whatever. Seriously, that's what happens a lot to you. Like, and you feel, at least with me, I'm empathetic now in a lot of situations where I was like, not.
Yeah.
So, any final words of wisdom?
No, I mean, on that same path that you were going down, I do think that it's, for me, it's interesting to think about there being something better out there. I used to have a little bit of a problem with people that are performers, and it's kind of funny seeing as I've been a musician my whole life, but there was something that was selfish isn't the correct word, but it's look at me. The focus needs to be on me. And, in really good musical situations, the benefits that an audience or an individual in the audience take away from it, it's very beneficial. I mean, music is a healer that we have access to, and it's fantastic. But there are people that are natural performers, and there are people that aren't natural performers. I've never been a natural performer. I mean, I had to struggle through it and beat myself up a couple of times and drink too much a couple of times, and then go, you know what, you got something to say.
Yeah.
And you've gotten to a place where you should feel open about contribute.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't like it, then they'll tell you it's okay.
Or they could change the channel.
Yeah, exactly. But being able to at least, jump in with both feet and take a chance and put yourself out there and be willing to fall flat on your face. That's not something I was good at early in life, but I've learned how to do it. And I think I've gotten good enough now that chances are I'm not going to fall on my face.
Just going to say, I'm thinking you're not falling flat on your face too much.
No,
think we could. I think that's a safe bet. If I was a betting man, I'd have no problem putting a lot of money, getting a lot of money on that chip on that side of the table. So,
well, thanks. I'm glad to hear that.
hey, listen. First of all, I want to thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you. I knew I would. Thank you. I look forward to meeting you in person next time I'm in Nashville. And I want to tell people where to find you. So you could find Pete. It's Pete Abbott, ABBOTT, on Facebook and Instagram. Excuse me. He is available if you're interested in having him play on your records. He has a home studio. He records tracks quite a bit. And the best way to find him there is to reach out to him on Instagram. Just look up Pete Abbott. It's like Pete something, but it's Pete Abbott. You'll see a guy. It's Pete. Also, he does play a lot of gigs locally in Nashville. If you're around the Nashville area, I know a lot of people listen to this are. You can check out. He'll post his gigs on social media. Also, if you are interested in lessons and working with Pete, whether it's locally or on Zoom, what things that he typically helps a lot of people with is if you have a band audition and you're queasy or nervous and you're not sure if you've got it down, he's really good at working people through that. He understands the process. He's gone through and passed a lot of auditions, and maybe not passed a couple auditions. I don't know. I don't just say that, but I'm assuming that. I mean, everybody doesn't get every audition, I'm assuming, right?
No, there's I don't know too much about, because I haven't been directly affected by that as of, say, the last 10 years, but there are ways to prepare. A lot of times I'll work with students on things that they don't realize they need to work on.
Yeah, it's always what you don't know that
it is.
We're a good teacher. I had this conversation this weekend, right? This was at this party, which I don't usually go to parties, but and this guy was like, I really want to be a better guitar player. He goes, I don't know how to play bar chords, but like if I practice, I could get good at it. I said, why don't you just get some lessons? He goes, well, I could practice on my own. Why don't I need to get lessons? And I said, you just told me you can't play bar chords. I'm like, I said, okay, let's say you don't need lessons. You're telling me how much you like your instrument, but you're not playing it. Isn't it worth it to pay a few bucks a day that'll force you to play every day for the joy it'll bring you in your life? He goes, well, I guess so. I'm like, God, like, then don't fucking take lessons. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want?
Yeah. You know, what's interesting about that is what people don't realize is if you take a lesson or two with a really good teacher that knows how to give you a little bit of insight into how to work on things so that you can learn how to play bar chords, or you can learn how to play this genre. You don't have to take that many lessons. The work is what you do, but getting insight from somebody that really knows the instrument and knows music, it's great. I have students, I might not hear from them for 6 months or a year.
It's the shortcuts you're giving them. They don't,
yeah.
I mean, how can you compare someone who's at your lifetime of experience? I mean, you could sit down with a guy like you for 20 minutes probably and learn like, they have 10 aha moments because they don't know. So anyway, let me get off on this. I sound like I'm frustrated at everything. I'm not. When people tell me I want something, but I don't want to do it, like what? I can't fix that. Anyway, so if you're interested in working with Pete, also, if you like his style of drumming and you want to get some insight into that, he could help you with that. Again, the best thing to do is to hit him up on social media on Instagram, and just connect him and let him know what you're looking to do, and so he can get back to you. Man, anything else I could pitch for you?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, I love meeting people and interacting with them, and as you said, if anybody's interested, they need a little bit of help, they need some guidance, and it could be verbal, it could be actually sitting at a drum kit via Zoom, or they've got music, they want to record it, and they need drums put on it, and or bass. I mean, I do stuff with different bass players around town that
he's got the tightest rhythms between him and all those guys, man. You're not going to get a tighter rhythm section, I can tell you right now.
So just don't be afraid to look me up.
Thank you. All righty, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, share it on your social media channels. Thanks very much to Pete Abbott. Again, follow him on social media on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're interested in tracks or lessons, hit him up. And most important, remember that happiness. And first of all, I'm really sorry. I had a nasally cold. I try to put it on mute every time I blew my nose. I probably missed once or two, so I'm really sorry about that today. But remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your drums, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Pete, thank you for everything, brother.
Craig, thank you very much.